Good afternoon, everyone. I want to welcome you on our new webinar, AI and Machine Learning, Episode 2. A quick introduction of Meron Investor channel if it's the first time with us. In 2020, we spoke a lot about our convictions, Asian economic resilience, semiconductor dominance. We started the year with a bright talk session on the Nordic high-yield bonds with a special focus on the Norway. Today, our journey will be different, and we are back to one of our favorite topics, artificial intelligence and machine learning for asset management. Our special guest and expert here with us is Denis de Montigny, PhD of University College London, Fintech Entrepreneur and Fintech Leader at CFA U.K. Today, I will be acting as the host of this webinar. I'm the Chief Investment Officer and Head of Asset Management at Jasmine Mitzi Financial Advisor. Denis, welcome back to our channel.
Thank you, Marc. Thank you for inviting me today and for the kind introduction as well.
Yes, thanks to you. I know that you are a very busy person, and because you are the architect on several exciting projects, I will say, and I'm happy to collaborate with you. I want to describe you, Denis. You are like a facilitator by creating, I will say, a bridge between academic research and concrete project. For the audience to know, we used to work together in London at Edmond Rothschild Asset Management, I have to say. And back at that time, I think data was a part of your DNA. So before our journey starts, any question I welcome, please send to him or to us by email, and we will provide you the email address at the end of the sessions. So thank you. Please, Denis, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Marc. I'd like to start by going back to our December Bright Talk. In December, we talked about AI, about disruption and innovation in asset management. We talked about the threat of new entrants in the industry. I mentioned Google and TikTok. As it turns out, Reddit was in the news recently with the GameStop short squeeze. And that strengthens what we were saying, that we don't know where the new entrants are going to come from exactly. But we should be prepared. We talked about the use of AI, especially in the front office, to improve our product and processes so that we can spend more time doing higher value activities. And then we talked briefly about what we were doing at UCL and innovation. So we had some questions about that at the talk. So we decided to go into more concrete detail about that here. So Thales of Miletus was a Greek mathematician from around 600 to 500 BC. Many consider him the first scientist in the Western tradition. So I think it's fitting to start with him. So first, let's talk about our objectives. Our main objective is successful innovation. So this includes ambitious projects like cutting edge, alpha generating, algorithmic trading, but also more practical projects like using AI to read the news, social media, and regulatory reports for us, and to tell us about the potential impact on our portfolio. So my first observation here is that in this area, the way innovation is done at the moment has a low success rate. So my proposal is to change the way we're trying to innovate and focus on research first. Now, I'd like to say we're used in the asset management industry to speaking of research as equity or market research. I use the word research here more broadly. I have tried to find another word that doesn't conflict with the way that we think of research. I've thought of academic research, exploration, investigation, experimentation. But what I really mean is all of these things with a view to implementation. So I just call it research. And I propose this approach basically as a way to de-risk innovation. Kailun was a Chinese inventor from the 1st century. Kailun was in fact responsible for operations at the imperial court in the 1st century. One of the things is that he observed that the silk papers that they were using at the time didn't work very well. So he basically invented modern paper. So I think he's fitting here because he took an approach that didn't work and he changed it to an approach that worked better. So my first argument is that the way that we innovate right now, the traditional approach of following a founding team from early stages to growth might not work well for us in tech. If we look at overall statistics, 40% of startup projects break even. 25% of VC funded startups return their investment. Now, I don't think this is really what we would define as success for ourselves. Anecdotal evidence suggests that between 1% and 5% of startups in a portfolio are responsible for most of the return in that venture capital portfolio. Now, of course, I focus on startups because data on the success rates of internal projects isn't easy to come by and interpret. And I think that we can think of our innovation process as a VC type internal startup where we're the VCs. And there are, of course, some important differences between projects that we start and VCs, because VCs look for the big wins. But they do that for a reason. And in my opinion, they do that because a few big wins is easier than many average wins. And so that being said, perhaps we can agree that our chances of success in innovation in tech lie somewhere between 5 and 25%. And I'm not sure, that we're happy with that. And as Dan Pink said, the solution is not to do more of the wrong things. Now, I look to Archimedes of Syracuse. He lived in the 3rd century. I like to think of him as someone who, thought out of the box. So if we look at the traditional approach that focuses on a team, I'd like to propose a different approach. I would propose to start with research. Now, research in itself has value, as we've discussed, Marc, a few times. But the issue is that once research is published, something that is published today was probably submitted for publication 6 months ago. It takes that long to go through the process, particularly for reputable journals. And if it was submitted 6 months ago, then the article was written a year ago. And if it was written a year ago, the research on which it's based is 2 or 3 years old. So something which comes out, seems like cutting edge research, is in fact something which is 3 years old. And in my opinion, we can improve on that process. And by focusing on research and trying to commercialize research as it happens, by focusing on research teams rather than a small team of founders, you open up to a broader group of researchers and a broader group of potential IP contributors. So this leads us to Galileo, who believed in testing things rather than what should, in theory, be the case. So he believed in experimentation, which is what I'm proposing here. So at UCL, we're developing a platform for innovation. We're in the midst of discussions with several partners, and hopefully I can tell you a bit about that in due course. But let me now share my screen so that I can present the platform more concretely. So the platform is currently a collaboration between UCL and a number of universities, including PUC Rio, the University of Luxembourg, and BTU in Denmark. The idea is to focus, as I said, on research teams comprised of a number of postgraduate students that change as research goes on. So research by one group is continued by research performed by the others. The result is a product that benefits from cutting-edge research undertaken by universities worldwide. So an upside of this is that applications. The research can have applications that were unanticipated at first. So at the academic level, we have a number of partners, including Professor Philip Drolevin and Guido Germano from UCL, Professor Christoph Schoma from University of Luxembourg, and Marty Velasco from PUC Rio. We have a number of projects which are ongoing at this time, including projects in asset management, in NLP for oil and gas, in company network analysis, and algorithmic trading. What do you think, Marc?
Yes, I mean, very interesting, as usual. That's why I say, Dennis, for us, just let's focus a little bit on the discussion we had, I would say, months ago, when I came to you and I asked you a question, Dennis, how you will face this issue that I'm facing at the moment. I'm the head of asset management. I get 4 financial analysts covering 20 assets each. So now at the moment, it's like a total of 80 assets. Knowing that these assets are extracted for a short list of 300 assets using our internal system. Now, in the first universe, we are limited with 80 assets, but we kept a certain dynamic floating. Now, on the second universe, which is the equivalent of, I will say, 300 assets, the dynamic was reduced, I will say, by half. And outside of this universe, which is the wide universe, our dynamic was quite minimal. So I will say, when I spoke to you about this issue, and I said at the end of the day, it was a human limitation. And you know that I will always have the idea that technology could answer this problem. And my view was like, let's try to mix talented individual with technology to get an optimal approach. So maybe please guide us a little bit on that direction and what kind of answer you provide me back at that time.
Well, Marc, I would certainly say, natural language processing has arrived to the point that certainly technology can help you in this way by analyzing quickly the data on all the companies, and including the ones in your portfolio, but including the ones in your universe that you don't really have time to focus on.
Thank you. Now, let's come back on something very concrete that we had, obviously, discussions back a few months ago, and you came with a clear and concrete answer. So it will be that slide. Let me describe to you here briefly. This is the investment process that we have in place here. We have, I will say, macroeconomic factors on one side. On the other side, we have fundamental valuation, market timing, market sentiment, and at the end, we have the portfolio constructions. Obviously, all these elements interact together. Dennis, can you maybe guide us with how you see the things, how you brought us a solution to this problem?
Sure. Well, let me share my screen again and show you a bit more about the asset management project. Now, one of the projects that we're working on is this asset management project. The aim of it is to use cutting-edge natural language processing to analyze a number of different sources, including news, regulatory reports, social media, and all in a number of different languages to help asset managers work more efficiently. So let me tell you about the team and therefore the type of research that we're doing. So Eric Chamoun did his MSc at UCL last year. He's now at Goldman Sachs. He looked at the impact of quarterly earnings reports of US companies, so 10Qs, 10Ks, on the market price of the companies. Yakub is our software engineer, so he's doing all the front to back end work to present what we're doing. So he's doing his master's in engineering at UCL. Cyrus is continuing the work that Eric did and bringing it further. Ilaria is doing her master's at DTU. She is focusing on NLP in Italian for Italian companies, including companies like ENI, Intesa, Ferrari, ST Micro. Jinga is looking at NLP in Chinese and at macroeconomic analysis. Sander is looking at social media, mostly with a view to identify high-quality sources rather than analysis of the masses. So he's looking at the tweets by the CEOs of companies and analysts around companies. Ahmed is focusing on Arabic for the Middle Eastern markets. Yuya is focusing on Japanese. Uri is focusing on Hebrew. Soham is a first-year undergraduate who's building a really very interesting tool that for us that I might tell you about in due course. Lovepreet is working on 8Ks. Tiago is from PUC Rio. And we have 5 undergraduate students from universities in India who are working with us right now and who'll be spending the summer in a virtual internship with UCL on this project. So let me show you concretely what Yakub has been developing based on this work. Now I'll show you only 2 things at this time. So this is the first thing I wanted to show you. This presentation shows, in this specific case, the S&P 500 companies by sentiment. So this is sentiment from -1 to 1. These companies have seen negative sentiment in the past few days, in the past day, and these companies have shown positive sentiment in the past day. The idea is that a client would have, for example, his benchmark or his whole universe of companies that he's interested in here, and the companies that he specifically, for example, in his portfolio would be highlighted. So this would correspond to your view of having the different universes. Then you can imagine if he wants to focus on some of the companies, he could click on them. And as he selects companies that he wants to see in more detail, they appear here. Now, the detail that we're showing at the moment, of course, is completely customizable by customer. The detail which is shown in these boxes can as well be customized by the customer. This view, which is of a whole benchmark, can also be split by sector. For example, these are the companies that are in the energy and in the industrials. And you'll notice that the companies that have been selected stay selected. Now, since we can make this breakdown, we can also make any arbitrary breakdown if a customer sees his portfolio in a different way, such as growth and value, or parts that are driven by momentum, etc. This dimension at the moment is sentiment that is driven by the models that we have in place on news, social media, and regulatory reports relating to these companies. But this dimension can also be different. We can present the portfolio and the benchmark, for example, by PE ratio or by momentum, having on the right the companies that are more momentum driven, and on the left those that are less so. So this again can be customized by the client. The second thing I want to show you is the following. So this is Tesla's 10K, which came out on the 8th of February, 2021, where we've highlighted, according to our model, these sentences which are positive and negative in the whole document. Now, this is a long document to read. This is actually only the management discussion section, so the MD&A. You may find that too much text is highlighted, and you might want to focus more on, just the positive or negative text, and you can do that just by selecting this. So you've got far less text now, which is selected. If you want to be even more restrictive, you can do so. Now, of course, these models will improve through time. They will as well be enhanced by summaries, keywords, this sort of thing. And I should add that the analysis is done on a company-by-company basis. So words which could be negative for one company might not be negative for another. For example, a catastrophic fall in oil prices is negative if you are Royal Dutch Shell, but probably positive if you're Caribbean Cruise Lines.
Thank you. I mean, incredible project, exciting project. Outside of the asset management, Denis, tell us a little bit more. I know you are working on a project on the oil, but can you be a little bit more specific on that side, and what's your aim here on this oil and gas project?
Yeah, well, the oil and gas, what I said earlier is that, sometimes research has unexpected consequences. So when we started doing research on the asset management and NLP in the asset management industry, focusing on news and so on, we're gradually developing expertise in Arabic, we're developing expertise in Portuguese, in Spanish, in Norwegian, in Russian, in English, of course. All these languages, some of them, of course, natural language processing in English is very well developed, very well advanced, but in other languages, it's far less so advanced. And we are, in some cases, really at the cutting edge of work in that area. And so we're combining all the different expertise that we have in all these key languages, which are languages which happen to be key for the oil and gas industry. And so we are doing multinational, multilinguistic natural language processing for the oil and gas industry. Now, using NLP in the oil and gas industry is being done. I mean, Petrobras is using NLP in Portuguese and English, but they are not doing it on a massive worldwide approach as we're doing. So an unexpected consequence, you would say, of the asset management project was this derivative NLP in oil and gas.
Very interesting, I would say. I mean, I see with you, it's good because, I mean, what you try to do here, it's like you say, you build bridge between academic research and concrete project. And it's really interesting because we are not so far. It's not anymore a dream. I think this dream machine, if I will say, it's in front of us. It's really in front of us. It's probably a question of months now. And I think you will be capable to deliver to the client something like unique, really unique that you cannot find outside because it's so fresh from the academic research that no one can get access. And I think that's why it's a very exciting project. Anyway, I would like to, yes, maybe you wanted to say something else on that side.
No, I agree with you. I mean, none of the research that we're doing at the moment, and some of it, as I said, is really cutting edge. None of it has been published yet. So, as you say, that protects the project that we're working on.
Great. I would like to thank you, Dennis, for your time today, but I also would like to thank you, the audience. Thanks for your time, and hope to see you for the episode 3 regarding artificial intelligence and machine learning, or we will see you on our next Bright Talk. Will be more focused on the Merrill funds. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you, Marc.